Welcome to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Hey, that's me. Hi, and welcome to Positive Talk. Our show features the best positive stories and people from around the globe as we endeavor to answer the universal question of why am I here and what is my purpose? Understanding that can change everything, and knowing your greatness is fundamental to living your best life. So join us right now as together we work to create the adventure of our lifetime. And welcome to the show, everybody. My name is Kevin McDonald, and today we've got John M. O'Brien with us today. And he doesn't really have a Irish accent, and he probably, if he had one, it would be better than the one that I just turned in. But in any event, Brachel's going to be joining us shortly, and I'm excited to talk to him today because you know, in our society today, and my dad went through it as well. He was an executive for Nordstrom for 30 years and was in management and stuff. And they put such enormous pressure on the people that they had working for them that they either expected at one point to either die or get fired. And that happens in a lot of businesses. And because apparently they don't. Well, I'm going to ask John about this because apparently they don't know any better. And by the way, I want you to go to activatesuccess.org to learn all about him and the work that he does. He is an intensely educated man. He's a psychotherapist. I believe a psychotherapist. Am I right?
Yes, indeed. Yes. Mm-hmm.
And he works with people to help them navigate through business and in through life so that they can lower some stress on themselves, because I don't know if you've heard, but stress kills.
Indeed. Absolutely.
And that is not something that, you know, I guess I need to start at the beginning of when somebody gets out of high school. And they either go to college or they go get a job, and then they rise to the what is that they call it? Rise to the level of your incompetence?
That's the saying, right? Yes, I think it's the Peter principle, right?
Oh, that's it.
No offense to our friends named Peter.
And so you rise to the level of your incompetence, and you try and do the best that you can because you want to do better and you want to continue to make more money and to rise. So you put yourself under enormous stress, and companies tend to take advantage of that, especially in sales and in management. In my dad's case, his job was basically dependent upon the numbers that he was able to produce last month, and did he hit his budget, and if he didn't hit his budget, why, and stuff like that. And then if you don't hit your budget enough times, then you get fired, and then you have then you've got nothing and stuff. Does that, John, in your work, does that happen in a lot of businesses?
Oh, absolutely. First of all, I just want to say thank you for having me back. It's a pleasure to be back on the show. And I do want to point out to the listeners who are not seeing this that although I don't have an Irish accent with an Irish name, I am wearing green. Let the record show. I am wearing green. So I at least get a few points for that.
Yes, and you know, and I was telling Brachel earlier that your beard and your mustache is very, very England of you, sir.
Yes, it's all part of the costume. It's all part of the psychologist costume that I don every morning when I get up. But no, I don't know if we talked about this the last time that we were together, Kevin, but when my dad was an executive, and he was with a company that shall remain nameless, but he was an executive under a tremendous pressure. And when he was 49, he had a major heart attack and was never able to work again, and died at the age of 63 after a series of health complications. And so when you talked earlier about stress killing, unfortunately, our family knows that rather personally, and the negative impact that the intense pressure he was under had on him.
It is so sad when you think about, because he was a very talented man.
Yeah.
And they lost Well, if he had a heart attack at 49 and 59, 60, so if he worked, they lost 15 to 20 years of really good, talented, a really good, talented individual because they put such enormous pressure on him. And, John, I think it's true. You tell me that the pressure that is put on people who care far exceeds the pressure that is put on people who don't really give a crap. And because they're willing to just say, I don't give a crap, I'll leave.
Absolutely right, and I think certainly people who care to do their best work, even when they are under resourced, are the ones who end up working extra long hours and trying to produce as best they can with, the whatever they do have, even that though they may need more. I also think certain professions, um, where the helping professions, where people purposefully go into them because they care, and that they are particularly vulnerable to not caring enough for themselves. So leaders in nonprofits and other things that are providing care to people, often have to work extra long hours and aren't very good at caring for themselves.
And when you're not caring for yourself, which we need to talk about a bit, when you don't care for yourself, at one point it's really difficult for you to care for anybody else, and then burnout sets in, and there's a lot of negativity around all of that. And your work is about helping businesses understand how that all works so that they can get, and it's amazing to me that how many businesses are like, well, you know what? This is how we've always done it. And this is how we're going to do it. And if they can't handle the heat, get out of the kitchen kind of stuff. Do you hear that a lot?
I do, but I think that's less true. Um,
Oh, that's good news.
is my impression. Just to clarify, so my background is a psychologist. That's where the piled higher and deeper comes from. My background is a counseling psychologist. But so I've done psychotherapy and worked as a psychotherapist for about 30 years now. But I also, the last several years, have started to consult directly to businesses around this stress, and the impact of rudeness, and on the importance of balanced living, um, and helping them see that the benefits to the organization by actually helping people live in greater balance. So my role as a coach or a consultant is, where I do most of that specific work outside of just the one-to-one meetings.
I wanted to ask you, and I've asked other guests that we've had on the show that are of a business nature, and I know that you've probably reviewed many P&Ls, which
Mm-hmm.
is a profit and loss statement. And I never see in any profit and loss statement that I've ever seen, perhaps you have um, there may be some more enlightened companies that you've worked with, but I've never seen a line on the P&L. First of all, if you've never seen a P&L, it's like how much money did the company generate, what it was the expense of, like in the food service industry that I worked in, the food cost, pork cost, liquor cost, all of those things, and it filters all the way down to the bottom of a how much money did you make or how much money did you lose.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never seen a P&L where there's a line on there for the cost of turnover.
Uh-huh.
Have you ever seen one?
I've not seen that anywhere. And it's one that's an invisible cost, but that actually is probably costing businesses way more than they realize.
And if they were to do the math of what it actually costs for to lose an employee that's already trained and then to hire somebody else, there's a cost of hiring, there's a cost of training, which can take as much as 18 months to get you back if that person stays. But if they decide, oh boy, I made a mistake, this ain't for me, and then it's another 18 months. And if they built those costs into the P&L and it became a number like, I don't know, 5 grand per employee or whatever it is, I would think they'd have a totally different idea of how they should treat their staff. Would that be true, or do they care?
Oh no, I think and let's be clear. I think there are many people in leadership who do care about their employees. I mean, and many leaders, I think, of organizations, once again, going back to being concerned about their employees, but not necessarily being as concerned about themselves and their own well-being and overworking and all that. But the replacement cost, and I could have studied up on this to be better prepared, but it varies based on the level of an employee. So I'm going to riff on this. It's something like this, that 40 to 60% of a single employee's annual salary is the cost to replace someone at kind of entry level or in lower levels of an organization, all the way up to in higher levels of senior leadership. You're looking at 300% of the annual salary of that person. So there are very real costs. The higher the person's level in the organization, the more power and institutional knowledge that they have that can be a benefit to the company, or the company loses when that person walks.
And I was in the restaurant business, and one of the things that I always preach to my assistants is, when we lose, as an example, a good bartender or a good waitress because of they're not being treated well or whatever it is, that there's a hidden cost of not only their wages, but how it impacts the customers that come into the facility who they've become friends with. Hey, where's John today? John got let go yesterday, or he quit. Where's he now? Oh, he's down at the keg down here. Okay, I'll see you later. Have a good day. I'm going down to the keg.
Yes. Yeah.
And that becomes a really big deal.
Well, and the other thing that sort of is peripherally perhaps related to that, Kevin, is when customers are in a business and they see leaders treating employees poorly, then they're less likely to go back to that business because they don't like seeing people treated in that way. And so many leaders aren't aware of the negative, like how they are talking to employees when customers are around. I mean, it matters no matter what when they're talking to the employees, but when customers are around, they're going to lose customers if they engage in that behavior.
There was and maybe it was you, I can't remember, but I had a guest on, and he was talking about, they went to it was a brand new sandwich shop, and where you would order your sandwich, and there was a beverage station and stuff like that, and ordered the sandwich, and he paid for the beverage, but the owner was there and didn't think that he'd paid for the beverage. And so she was complaining to him about, you need to pay for that and stuff. And when that happens, you lose that customer forever. And you lose 10 other people that are their friends. Don't ever go to that sandwich shop. They're terrible.
Yes, that was in fact my story. So it stayed with you, Kevin, right?
It did. It was very important to me.
Yeah. Well, and what happened is I had ordered the sandwich and I ordered a water, and I paid what I was told to pay because I'm a dutiful grown up, a dutiful Irish Catholic boy. So like, you tell me what to pay, I'll pay you. And then sat down, went outside, and then the next thing I know, someone's screaming, not just coming to talk to me, someone's screaming, coming across the patio, screaming. And that's when it was the owner who was screaming, saying that she could not afford people stealing from her. And it was just a water, but this was, so it was a huge, huge scene. And I thought I'd paid for the water. And so anyway, it turned out, I went back and paid for the water, my $1.50. And I never went back. And that restaurant closed a few months later because I'm sure that her behavior was not just inappropriate with me, but with employees and with other customers. And so that killed her business.
And why is it? I grew up in the restaurant business, but why is it that there are people that are populating that? And I suppose it's in all kinds of businesses, but why are they so short-sighted that they don't recognize the importance of treating your employees well, you're treating your customers well, and always having a smile on your face?
Well, I think I mean, having worked in the restaurant industry myself, being a busboy and working on a soda fountain and being a manager and being a waiter, not a very good waiter. My apologies to the people who had me as their waiter. Um, but it's a stressful job. It's a
Yep.
very stressful job. And you're, especially when things get very busy and you have customers, and so there's a lot of intensity. And all of us have stress related negative behaviors that we will engage in. All of us do. And so, but I think it's more visible when you're in the restaurant industry and you're trying to kind of coordinate things between customers and your employees. And that's sometimes when people, in the moment, in that stress, engage in problematic behavior. So I think it's more visible in the restaurant industry because customers are there.
You know what's interesting? Let me tell you a real quick story about my experience when I was a terrible waiter too. Um, I as a bartender, I was really good. As a waiter, I was just not very good. And I distinctly remember being at the pass bar. Now, the pass bar is where the guys in the kitchen put up the order onto the pass bar, and then the waiter takes the order to the guest. And I was sitting there looking at it, and I had my little pad of stuff, and I had 3 tables that came up at the same time because I got sat 3 tables at the same time, which is not a very good thing to do. But so I was standing there looking at all this food and where it was going to go, and I was looking at my pad, and I was thinking to myself, you can just leave right now. And the stress will be gone, and you don't have to worry about it anymore. And it was so close to being, well, here you go, good luck with this, and walk out the back door. And that happens a lot in the restaurant business.
Yes. Yeah. When the staff have their own stress related negative behaviors, and they just get too overwhelmed and give up. And that, I think, goes to the point, whether it's restaurants or other businesses, if someone's doing a job well, a lot of times the business kind of leans into that person to keep doing the job well, but therefore placing more and more pressure on that person to perform and ultimately potentially burning them out.
And that happens all the time. By the way, we're talking with John O'Brien, and go to his website, which is activatesuccess.org. We're going to talk about his website and what he can do for you and the services he offers when we come back. But we need to take a quick break. And by the way, if you are a real estate agent or a real estate agent wannabe, or you're just starting your career and things ain't going so good, and getting leads are hard, and getting clients are even harder, I got a guy that you need to talk to. Listen to this.
You became a real estate agent for freedom, success, and real momentum. So why are you still stuck waiting for closings to save you? I'm Ophir Adar, founder of Real Momentum, and I help agents like you become 7-figure earners. My first client that I coached, brand new agent, made $250,000 back in 2006. What's the secret? You feed your white wolf. That's the part of you that's bold and unstoppable and a closer and able to build rapport quickly. So click Get Listings at Real Momentum and let's unleash your real estate potential.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. John O'Brien is our guest, and I'm willing to bet. I don't know this, and so I'll just put it out there, but I'm willing to bet that you understand the concept of feeding your white wolf. And
yes, I think that would be a safe bet.
And so, by the way, Brishelle is joining
John.
us.
Hi, Brishelle. So nice to see you.
You as well. It's been a while.
Yes.
Why is it that everybody brightens up when I bring her in? It's just not fair.
Because we love Kevin.
Yeah. So John, explain to our audience that they've never heard. It's an old Indian proverb, I do believe.
Yes.
But explain what feeding your white wolf means.
So don't remember the details specifically of the story, but in essence, the essence of the story is, which part of yourself do you want to feed? The part of yourself that can do good, that some people talk about kind of moving towards lightness, positivity, that's healthy, adaptive, or do you want to feed a darker side of yourself that may be more focused on negativity, being difficult, narcissism, unhealth? And the idea behind the story is to recognize, even though it's more challenging at certain points in life, we always have a choice over which part of ourselves we want to feed, the more adaptive and healthy part, or the kind of dysfunctional and unhealthy part.
And I, for one, choose to feed my white wolf because it's a hell of a lot more fun than being negative all the time. Don't you think?
Oh, I absolutely think so. I see the Brichelle, though. Maybe I see she's nodding. I want to maybe give her a chance to talk here too. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I love that because, John, I was in a place in my life for a really long time where I loved to feed, let's call the black wolf. And he felt powerful, and thought, I think it's crazy because when we're in that mode and feeding that chaos, we feel like we're actually in control. But in reality, we have everything but our control because we're not even controlling ourselves or have the awareness to do so. And since I fed the white wolf, which I love that you call that, because it gives you, like, you think about the sense of a wolf and how powerful they are and what they stand for and how they are together and who they are separately. They're still each other, but they're in a pack and they're there together for life and death. And I think if we focused on that in ourselves, we could actually probably come together a lot more, don't you think?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think absolutely. If it's about seeing commonality and about
Yeah,
focusing on what brings us together, as opposed to focusing on what divides us.
yeah, exactly.
Boy, that was a hell of a question there, Rochelle. That was pretty cool.
Sorry. My brain does what it does when we're on these shows, and you know.
Well, but you're absolutely right in that and John, isn't it true that we have the choice and the ability to decide which wolf we are going to feed?
Absolutely. I mean, I guess I would just say that, I mean, obviously, it varies based on someone's life circumstance, and that some
Mhm.
people have more emotional or financial or psychological or relational resources, which makes it easier to make a choice in the direction of health. Sometimes the more limited someone's resources are, not that they can't choose the healthier path, but it's much harder when stress levels are so much higher and people
Mhm.
don't have a lot of resources.
I have a question. I have a question. What about the days that we see ourselves? I'll admit to this. We're human. This is reality. We're on this earth. And yesterday I fed that black wolf. And I think I was frustrated because I recognized that I was doing it, but I couldn't stop doing it. Why is that?
Well, again, I think that um, it very, as I said, people's life circumstances can be different, and also
Right.
for each of us, our um, we can have certain days when we're at the top of our game, certain days when, oh, we're maybe struggling a little bit, and then certain days where it just seems like everything is against us or is going, the stars are all aligning in all the wrong ways.
Yep.
And I think
Exactly.
therefore it's much harder and sometimes feels even impossible to be choosing a healthier path when it just seems like you are trying to be a salmon swimming upstream and the stream is winning.
Yeah. Well, and I want to share this with you because this is part of the in my world, this is part of the way that I think. And which is um for those of you that don't know, a couple of weeks ago, I did an old person thing, and I fell over and ended up breaking my wrist, and had to have it surgically put back together again. And rather than saying to myself, "Oh, that was stupid. I broke my wrist, and now I'm going to have to go to the doctor, and then they're going to do this, and it's going to take forever, and I'm going to be stuck in a cast for a month or so, and da. And it probably isn't going to, there's probably aren't even going to do surgery for a couple of weeks. So I'm going to have to sit here and have a broken wrist for a couple of weeks. And so I go to I call the medics and say, "Help me. I'm old. I've fallen and I can't get up." And so they said, "Oh, we'll send somebody right over to get you up." And so they did. And they took me to the emergency room, and they put a cast on, or they put a splint on it. And the guy that they were talking to on the phone, the expert in healing bones, osteopath, no,
orthopedist, probably an orthopedist.
Thank you, an orthopedist guy.
Yeah.
And he turned out to be the same guy that I ended up going to have surgery 4 days later, because and he said, "No, don't set that. You're just going to make it worse." And so I went to see them on Wednesday. Now I do a podcast. I do 6 to 8 shows a week, and I was real concerned that I wasn't going to be able to physically do it. And so I mentioned that to her, and she said, "Well, I'll be right back." And she left, and she met the doctor who was on that call on Saturday night. And she met the doctor in the hallway, and he said, "Is whatever my condition was, is he here?" And she said, "Yeah, he's sitting in there." And so he said, "Okay, let's book it." And so they booked it for the next day. So I was able to get the diagnosis, have the x-rays, and was quietly snoring on the operating table. I don't know if I snored or not, but I can't remember any of it. And the very next day. And so from my standpoint, okay, I had an accident. I fell. So what? I had great doctors, and they took great care of me, and they got it done really fast. And that is, so it became, I wouldn't say it was exactly a positive experience because there was a lot of pain involved, but it was better than saying to myself, "Oh, woe is me, and screw everybody, and I hate everything." And because I could have gone in the doctor's office, and I could have had a negative attitude because I hurt and stuff. And they would have said, "Why should I do anything nice for this guy? We'll just schedule it a week and a half out," rather than, no, he seems to be a nice guy, and he understands. So sometimes being kind, being nice can get you more. Is that true?
Absolutely. Well, it can get you more in terms of, obviously think about, who do we want to help? We want to help people who are positive and nice and responsive. That's kind of our natural thing, is to be helping those people, right?
Oh, yes.
And if people are grouchy or negative, that's off-putting, and you certainly don't want to help those people. So,
and we just had one of those.
Yeah. Mention that in a second, Kevin, but I love to mention and just say that I truly believe that happened to Kevin, not just because he's a nice person and all these things. I know you can be as nice as you want to me. If I'm having one of those really low days, I'm not going to feed into it. But the energy he put out before he even got to that office set that up for him. And it makes you pay attention to where you set yourself in a position of how you view a situation on really exactly how the rest of it is going to go. And Kevin is doing great. So we're very happy for that. So Kevin, yes, please share.
No, I'm not going to tell that story, but there was a moment in time earlier today where somebody disagreed with us, and we kind of were not as kind as we might have been. We weren't.
No.
We weren't unkind to them. It was after they got off the phone that we were. It's like, "What the heck do you mean?" and that kind of thing. But the fun thing was, we had the next guest that we had brought into the studio, and so he caught the benefit of us being unruly, and that actually kind of calmed him down, and he was very compliant after that. So it's very nice. So, but those,
well, I think it's really the understanding of when you don't reach out and it's the same way, Kevin. I was just saying is some people, the way they portray themselves is exactly what they get in return because that's what they're putting out. And that second guest that came in and heard me a little bit upset and very passionate about defending you and positive talk, and he understood. And you know, I told him right after I had my little spiel, I said, "Hey, welcome. Thank you for understanding that we're so human here because it's okay to have emotions, to grow and to change." I know we need to take a break, John, and I want your opinion on this when we come back. Is I think when a lot of people think that, you know, I need to learn and I need to change and I'm going to grow and I'm going to move forward, that means I'm going to be less emotional or I'm going to be less mindful or, you know, I'm not going to get angry and I'm not going to be sad. And that is exactly the opposite of what the reality is. So, Kevin, I'll let you take us into break. And John, I would love your perspective on emotion when it comes to allowing what is real and what is not.
And John, I almost fell out of my chair, but I'm not allowed to because I'll probably break something. But we need to take a real quick break because it was so cute. It was like, oh, hi, how are you? We'll be right back.
You're listening to Brushwood Media Network, the best in syndicated talk, news, and entertainment shows.
Apparently, we're not having a break right there.
Back early? I'm not playing with the dog.
So, Rochelle, go ahead and ask the question to John again. I think it would be it'd be great for him to answer all that.
Yeah, just very simply, how is the correct way to view your emotions and still allowing yourself to feel and think and go through the motions as you're changing in a healthy way without pretty much just shoving it all down?
Well, let the record show that, you know, as a psychologist, I can't relate to being human because, you know, we are in a different category. I'm just teasing, of course.
You're like Mary Poppins. You're practically perfect in every way.
But yeah, I wish that were the case. No, I mean, absolutely. You know, we are human too. And I think that if we see that emotions have their place in our lives, whether it's in terms of relationships or decision making or overall health, that emotions are things, they're sources of information. They're sources of coping. They have their benefit. Every emotion has its function. I think problems come when people try to shut down emotion and pretend that they're not of value or that they just have to try to get rid of them, or when people make decisions or live their lives totally based on emotion. Many times that's problematic as well. So it's the old adage of trying to find balance when it comes to many things in life, and that includes the awareness of and expression of emotions.
So John, yeah, that's really cool. I gotta ask you, like my basic mantra is it's none of my business what you think of me. So is that because I don't care what they think of me and so it doesn't bother me, or is that a self defense mechanism that I use so that I don't take it personally?
Well, I think, you know, I would do the psychologist thing and say that, Kevin, you ultimately have to answer that question for yourself. It's not, we psychologists are not, in fact, psychic and say, let me read you. Aha, this is what it is. But I think that that to my mind, it's a healthy coping mechanism because you can't really dictate what someone else is going to think and feel about you. Obviously, your behavior influences that, but they're responsible for their perceptions. And just like you're responsible for your own behavior and your perceptions. So I think also that maybe not caring what other people think is something that people develop over the course of their lifetime. and that as people get older, they care less about perceptions of other people and become more free, ideally, to be the self that they want to be.
Yeah, because as have gotten older, I look in the mirror and it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. So, kind of thing.
Absolutely right.
And but
I have a
why is
question.
yes, ma'am.
John, do you think that comes from the security of learning and having the experience to have a little more of a foundation within yourself and know who you are, and you have to stand against that as you do when you're younger?
You blipped out a little bit there, but I think you're saying that is it. See if this is what you were saying. Is it kind of life experience and kind of knowing yourself more that allows you to get to the place
Yeah,
of caring less about other people? Is that what you were saying?
exactly.
Yes. I mean, I think there's the potential for that. As you will see, the more you hang out with me, that the psychologist answer to things is often it depends. So, but in this case, it's true because people can become older but really be stuck and they don't develop. So it's not just about getting older, but it's about prioritizing knowledge of yourself and trying to be a better version of yourself and being more comfortable with yourself. I think there's more of a potential for that as you get older, but it's not necessarily just simply baked into the process. You have to work at it.
Okay.
John, I got to
like
ask
that.
you. Yes, so do I. But and you seem so calm, and do you ever get mad when you're driving a car?
Me? Kevin, do I ever get mad? Well, I would just like to say in my defense up front that I grew up originally in the Boston area where driving is a contact sport.
Yeah.
So we pride ourselves on driving being like roller derby or something like that. So absolutely. No, I mean, that is something that I've had to work at over time. Because again, in part, it was culture about living in the Northeast and specifically down in the Boston area where you just have to put yourself out there. And, Maine is a slower pace of life, which has been so much of a relief. But nonetheless, you can get irritated and frustrated driving. And that's something that I've had to work at. And so I try to be mindful every time I get behind the wheel about not, is someone going to get in front of me, cause me frustration? It's more, and I tell clients this, like, it's going to happen. Like, be ready because, and I always like to think my own personal belief is when I have someone who gets in front of me who's going very slow, I tell myself, oops, this is an angel who's trying to remind me that I need to slow down in my life. That's the reframe I use. And most of the time it helps.
That's a really great position to rather than honking at them or if you're like me, and I think Rochelle probably does it too when she drives, that you want to get a look at that person when you're passing them. You turn around to look to see who it is. Aha!
No, Kevin, I figured it out. This is the best way to get yourself in to keep in a steady mode without letting it be this huge confrontation and without ruining them. You can either do this, which will super confuse them because you're not being mean, but you're not being nice. Or you can smile, really happy. Hi. And either way, you're not putting out any negativity, but maybe they're going to remember your face a little more than if you would have just gotten mad, because then they're just going to blow it off. Anger comes and it goes. And moments of confusion, we try to understand and continue coming back to think. And so every time they get in their vehicle, they're going to see me doing that. And then they're going to think twice, hey, maybe when I'm driving down that road, I should stay off my phone this time. But I figured out that there's many ways. John, you probably know much more ways than me, but when it comes to choosing how to handle something, there's an infinite option of ways you can handle it. And a lot of times we think, oh, this is the only way. Why do we do that?
Well, we have ways that we solve problems, or there's a
Yeah.
whole research, a whole host of research that says that when we are confronted with situations, a lot of times we are not even consciously aware of the situation until we are already responding to it. In other words, that our
Right.
response is already generated even before we are consciously aware of that. And so,
Yeah.
so we have a way we solve a problem, deal with criticism, deal with conflict, and we go into that auto routine,
Mm.
and so we're already into that, and so we just keep it going because hey, it's worked for us, right? But back to
Yeah.
many times, it's actually not working well for us.
Yeah.
John, what is the difference between reacting to something and responding to something?
Uh-huh. The way I think about the difference is reaction is without a whole lot of thought, and it's more emotion based, and it's sort of quick,
Yeah.
versus responding brings in more of our rational thinking. It's about taking a pause and trying to um, deal with a situation in a more reflective way, where we're trying to come from our best self or trying to do what is most effective in that moment. And so it's really about taking time to be more conscious of our behavior as opposed to just simply using emotion in a reaction.
So how would you
What?
help somebody to catch that in that moment and help?
Well, what I tell people is, first of all, to see, okay, are there certain emotions that are problematic for them? Like when they get angry, when they get frustrated, when they get irritable, is that when they are engaging in problematic behaviors that they want to try to avoid? And so it's, and bringing awareness to the fact that, oop, I'm angry. Ooh, I'm getting irritated. The sooner you
Hmm.
become aware, ooh, I'm in this feeling, it's like I really need to pay attention to what I'm doing. So sometimes it's about certain emotions, and I try to get people to be more aware of, ooh, I'm feeling this. I need to be very aware of what I'm doing. Or there are certain situations, like the example I gave earlier about driving, and that, when people, when you get behind the wheel of a car, being aware, ooh, this is a high risk situation. Or when you're going to be dealing with a family member or relative that just seems to bing, 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 push your buttons. It's like, I need to be aware of how I'm going to respond to the situation.
And
Okay.
that doesn't that require you to take a beat, take a step back, analyze what your reaction is liable to be so that you can respond appropriately. One of my triggers is if somebody comes at me and is mad at me, and I could be calm as day, and they're coming at me because of whatever reason, and they're angry with me, that causes me to be angry in return
Mm-hmm.
rather than to take a good response to it. I become, oh yeah, well, you know what, you and the horse you rode in on.
Yes, yes. So it is about taking a pause. Now, that isn't always easy to do in the moment. Let's be clear. I will teach people breathing techniques and saying, use breathing to help kind of ground yourself and take the pause. And they're like, oh, sure, John, that's just what I'm going to do. I'm in the middle of a conflict with my boss, and I'll be like, hey, just a minute. I got to go do my breathing that John wants me to do. Like, that's not going to happen. And I say, no, this is not what I'm saying, right? That sometimes sometimes it's you have to figure it out after the fact, what happened, and then how can you handle that differently. So when I'm interacting with my boss or this person, they're potentially going to bring out the anger. So it's about reflecting after the fact when our behavior is not what we would like it to be, to figure out, now, what could I have done differently, and how can I try to be more aware of this in the future?
Because most of the time it's really counterproductive when you get triggered and then you react, and then you're done reacting and then you go, oh boy, that probably wasn't a good idea.
Well, and it
Yes.
brings so much guilt and frustration and even confusion within yourself, and then you have more to apologize for, more to be gracious for, and it's so avoidable. But I love how you understand and tell your clients, John, that it is, it's a roller coaster ride, road. It's not just, oh, I got it. I know now, so it's just going to be that way, because life is not that way.
Absolutely. And it's, again, just like we were talking about before, Rochelle, like some days are better than others. And when I'm having a good day and I'm faced with someone who's angry at me, I'm going to be much more skilled, as opposed to days when I haven't slept well, or I haven't eaten as well, or I haven't gotten exercise, or maybe I'm sick. Like I'm vulnerable emotionally because I'm off. It's going to be harder those days to implement skills.
Well, and especially when you do a good job at not being triggered at the first person, and then you get it a second person, and you're not quite as good, and then the third person, and then the fourth person, and then they find their head in the basket somewhere.
Yes. Sometimes in neuropsychological terms, they talk about that with a neuron of kind of kindling, about things kind of, sort of slowly building up over time. And so that's what you're describing, is like that pressure building, but then at some point it just becomes too overwhelming and you end up giving into it.
And by the way, Michelle, who are we talking to again?
We are talking to John M. O'Brien. If you can't remember that, I'll say it normally. John M. O'Brien is our guest.
And if you go to his website, which is activatesuccess.org, find out all about him, and you can learn all this stuff. I'm so sad that I think Rochelle's got to go. So we need to play a commercial, and then if she's still here when we come back, that will be a blessing. So we need to take
I
a quick
do
break.
have to go, Kevin, and I wish I could be here, but I'm going to go be with my grandpa. So thank you, John, for being here, and I need you to come back because I'm going to have a list of questions. And thank you again, Kevin. I hope you guys have a phenomenal rest of the show.
And I gave her permission that she could go, and that's when she leaves, we need to talk about that, because there are some people that would say, no, you're contracted to be here. But it's my grandpa. We're leaving day after tomorrow, and I'm not going to see him for another 2 or 3 years. And his health is not all that good. I don't care. You need to be here. And we're going to talk about how people should handle that scenario other than punch the boss in the face. So we'll be, Rochelle, thank you so much. And we will be right back after this message.
When the game is on the line, championship teams know the game plan. They communicate and work together to win. We all need a game plan to protect ourselves online. Talk to family and friends so they know how to stay safe too. Create strong passwords, turn on multi-factor authentication, update software, and recognize and report phishing, because online safety is not something you want to fumble. Get more game-winning tips at CISA.gov/secure our world. Then share them with family and friends.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. And Rochelle has gone to have dinner with her grandpa, which I think is just wonderful. And I think she left us a message on her way out, which is, love you all, have fun. And John, I just got to tell you, I am so pleased that I get to work with such an outstanding individual. She's a lot of fun. And I don't understand. Help me with this. Employers that even when there is, why are not some employers as compassionate to the human needs of their people like they really could be?
Well, there's probably many reasons, Kevin. I mean, that sometimes it's individual employees don't matter. What matters is the business. And so some organizations just chew through employees because they figure they can just get more. That's certainly becoming less so these days, but nonetheless, I think sometimes they're more focused on the business side of things than simply the bottom line.
Don't they understand that they go hand in hand?
Not necessarily. No, and I think that there's also there's a personality characteristic called interpersonal sensitivity, which basically means how much is a worker or a supervisor focused on the task versus the person, and like how sensitive can they be to the needs of the individual, especially like what you were describing about like a family member or something. Some people, all of us will vary somewhere in that concept of interpersonal sensitivity, but people who are low on that aren't really going to care much about Brachel's grandfather or need to see him, because it's like, no, this job needs to get done and you're contracted to be here, and so you just need to be here till the end of your shift, period. And they don't realize the negative impact that has, not just on the person for that day, but then that person is less loyal and less engaged with the business, and therefore going to perhaps start looking for other work.
Or ways to kind of get back at the business and hurt the business, even though they stay there.
Absolutely. Yes. The term quiet quitting gets used sometimes for people who will stay in a business, but do as little as possible while they collect a paycheck, and sometimes they're looking for other work.
And oftentimes in those scenarios, it takes a long time for the business to catch on to what they are doing. And then there's a whole termination process and all that kind of good stuff. It can cost the company literally thousands of dollars in the meantime.
Absolutely. Yes. And when I think supervisors or leaders are treating employees so poorly that they end up in legal battles around, harassment or hostile work environments. I've certainly worked with individuals who have been in those situations and had to file claims. And it's so interesting just to see that the business is perhaps happy to pay out a claim and keep the leader in place. But it's like, at what point does the organization see that even though they may think this leader has a great value, that there are also these many ways in which they are poisoning the organization?
But oftentimes they don't. When I was an employee, and I got told eventually that you're not a very good employee, so I haven't been one since. But when I was an employee, and they would distribute the survey. Here's a work survey. Oh, don't worry, it's anonymous. Oh, sure, and stuff. And they're trying to find out what's going on in their business, but they're not involved enough with their business to know innately. Doesn't a good leader, a good CEO, aren't they generally in tune with what's going on with their business, or at least should be?
Well, ideally are, but it depends upon how much interest do they take at people outside of their direct reports, because sometimes leaders in organizations, if they don't make an effort to try to talk to people at various levels in the company, they are protected and sometimes kept from information about what's going on in certain departments. And let's face it, leaders are often very busy with doing a number of things, and so it may only be once a certain department has lost numerous people that they may start to get to their radar screen. They notice that something's going on in accounting, or something's going on over in this other department, marketing department, for example.
Well, and then there's the subordinate who goes and buddies up to the boss, and they go play golf and they go drinking every Friday night and stuff. They get a wider berth, I would think, because they like them rather than, and so they tend to dismiss some of the stories that they hear or some of the things that are actually going on in the department. And that's kind of true too, huh?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, we're all human, right? And if we are friends with someone or friendly with someone, then we're going to be perhaps focused more on our experience of the person. Right? This person is treating me well, so this must just be bad rumor, or this must be just someone who's disgruntled. It couldn't be accurate, when in fact it's important to pay attention to that information.
And there's some things that I don't understand. Maybe you can help me, because when I was a general manager of a Mexican restaurant, one of the things that you do is you give chips to everybody. Chips, tortilla chips for everybody, and you get a basket, and it goes on all the tables and all that. Well, because of that, over time, their chips would fall on the floor, and so the floor becomes kind of full of chips. And the busboys are trying to clear the tables. We've got to wait up front, and tell me if I did the right thing. We've got to wait up front, and we've got dirty tables that need to be taken care of, and so that we can get those people seated, so that they, number one, don't leave, and number two, we can get the next turn going. And one of my assistant managers was standing there, and she points to the chips on the floor and to the busboy who was trying to clear another table so that we could seat it. And she said, "I want you to clean this up now." So I went to her and I said, "That's not appropriate, because he's trying to do the best job he can for the business so that we can get the most people in and out and in and out. You could have picked up the broom or the thing and cleaned it up yourself." Was I right in that, or is that kind of a judgment call?
I mean, I think any leader of an organization ideally is prepared to do any role to show that they're willing to kind of be a part of the team and help out where the team may need. So I think absolutely, unless there is some reason why it would not be good, our workers, depending upon other people or sort of purposely being very quiet quitting, not doing things so that other leaders have to step in. I think there may be exceptions to this rule, but I think absolutely, if you're going to be a good leader, then you work with people. You don't have it that people work for me and I tell them what to do.
So there is a distinct difference between between a supervisor and a leader.
Yes, as we're the way that we are thinking about it right now, a supervisor watches others and tells others what to do, and waits for them to do it. A leader tries to guide people to do things, but also does what's effective, and sometimes actually steps in to help the team where it may need it.
I killed more ties stepping into the dish pit because we needed dishes and the person was overwhelmed. But I knew how to do it. And so, that's one of those. And by the way, the staff respected me for it because I was willing to roll my sleeves up, get my tie killed, and to try and get clean dishes out.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I would just add in, some organizations are now doing something that is called a stay interview as opposed to an exit interview. Every year to interview the people that are staying and saying what's going well and what do you think needs to be different. It's not a concept I came up with, but it's very beneficial to actually take interest in the people that are still there and what's going well and what can we do to make you even happier.
That is a big deal. Because you don't know how many of those people that are still there are putting their resume out because they would choose not to be there.
Yes.
That's a big deal. John O'Brien has been our guest. He is remarkable, and activatesuccess.org is his website. Please go visit him, and you can learn about all his services, and he's got resources. And, dang it, John, we're run out of time, but I wanted to talk about Rudeness Rehab. You're going to have to come back, and we can talk about that. Can we do that?
Absolutely. Yes, that's my new book that talks about how to identify and manage rudeness in ourselves and in others.
That's kind of a big deal.
Right.
That's a big deal. And they can pick the Rudeness Rehab up everywhere, right?
Yes. Yep. It's available in many bookstores and certainly on Amazon you can find it.
And John O'Brien has been our guest again. And thank you for being here. ActivateSuccess.org and pick up the book Rudeness Rehab, because quite frankly, most of us could use some rehab of our rude behavior. from time to time. John, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me. I look forward to coming back.
You must. It's a rule. Rochelle said it. So if Rochelle said it, by gosh, I'm not going to cross that one. I can tell you that right now.
Me either.
So, thank you. Thank you, John. And you have a great day.
You too.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Our purpose is to provide everyone with a positive, entertaining, and educational experience. I would love your feedback and comments about the show, including possible topics and great guest suggestions. Please email me at kevin@kmmedia.pro. And remember, be kind to one another because each other's all we